All right, man, peace. So, according to reports, there is a new reason for the fracture in the Cleveland Cavaliers locker room. That being that Mr. Isiah Thomas has developed a very close relationship with the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, that being Mr. Dan Gilbert. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
And I do want to ask you, as a shooter, Tracy, Isiah Thomas again last night says, I'm only 75%. I need to get back into rhythm. He needs to take a lot of shots. He was actually taking a lot of those shots away from Kevin, so maybe now at least that conflict is on the shelf for a little bit. When you see him play, oh, well, this is LeBron. We'll get to that.
Let me say this also. For Isiah Thomas to state that he's only 75% right now, that's his way of saying, I'm not going to be ready by the end of this season. So if you're expecting me to look like the player that I was in Boston last year, you're not going to get that this year. And I believe that that's why he's spending a lot of time investing in getting on the phone and speaking directly with Mr. Dan Gilbert to try to keep the lines of communication open with the owner. Because I think that Isiah Thomas realizes that there is a potential for him to be the top dog on Cleveland next year, especially if LeBron James decides to leave. I think that Isiah Thomas is intelligent enough to understand that for him to even get anywhere near the numbers that he wants to get on his next contract, he has to ingratiate himself with the owner and let him know that the player that you're seeing this year is not the player that you're going to get if you give me a 4-year deal worth somewhere around 150, 160 mil. I'm pretty sure that Isiah Thomas is smart to know that getting a max deal is completely off the table.
First of
all, I don't see the explosive quickness out of
that's
Isiah.
that's what I want to ask about
that.
Isiah. Do you think this is him working his way back, or do you think maybe he's not the player after his injury that he was?
Well, he's definitely not the player before the injury.
And that's the problem. Because at 5 feet 8.5, or whatever they claim he is, 5'9", he has to be extremely explosive, unbelievably explosive to play in the NBA. And there's two types of explosiveness. There's horizontal explosiveness and there's vertical explosiveness. Now, you see horizontal explosiveness with players like a Kyrie Irving, even a Chris Paul to a degree. And of course, vertical explosiveness you see with players like Russell Westbrook. A player like Isiah Thomas, he has to have that horizontal explosiveness, the ability to beat his man off the first step, and also that last step has to be a strong move towards the basket, and he has to be strong enough to fend off the defender so that he can get his shot off. If he loses even a sliver, it makes him a totally different player. It's pretty much the difference between him averaging 28 points a game last year with Boston and not even being an NBA player, because he doesn't bring anything else to the table. He can't play defense. He's not a great passer. Of course, he can't rebound. He has to bring scoring. And unfortunately for him, he played almost too well last year in the system that was pretty much designed for him by Brad Stevens, to the point where they were able to sell Cleveland on his potential to do that in a system that will be dominated by LeBron James. Isiah Thomas is not good enough to score 24, 25 a game on 47, 48% shooting if he has a debilitated hip, even with a LeBron James. He's just not. So that explosiveness, it better come back for his sake.
I mean, he is not that. Now, could he get back to that? That remains to be seen. He's not showing that right now because, again, I don't see that explosive Isiah Thomas that I seen last year in the Boston Celtics uniform.
I don't know if you're ever going to see that again, bro. For those of you brothers old enough to remember, Bo Jackson, one of the great athletes of the last 40 years, he dislocated his hip in a playoff game against the Cincinnati Bengals. He was never the same again. And he was a far greater athlete than Isiah Thomas.
It's interesting. Bleacher Report published an article yesterday that included details about the relationship between IT and the owner, Dan Gilbert. The article cited league sources saying they often exchange calls and text messages. Ty Lue was asked in his pregame availability about how much he talks to Dan Gilbert. He said not a lot. So I guess Isiah's got the direct line. I don't know.
Well, the next time Ty Lue talks to Dan Gilbert, it's probably going to be for him to get his walking papers. Because certain coaches show you what they are. Nothing against Ty Lue, but he's shown himself to be an assistant coach. You know, he's pretty much the guy who catches the balls off the rim in practice. That's what he's pretty much shown himself to be. Top level coaches, they have to view the court like a chessboard. And he just does not have that ability. He means well, but he's just not that guy. And I told you brothers that a long time ago in the sit-down interview that Kyrie Irving had on First Take, where he pretty much let the world know that he was going to Boston because he wanted to take advantage of the fact that he would have the opportunity to learn the game on a far deeper level, on a macrocosmic level from a Brad Stevens. That's also one of the reasons why he wanted to go play in San Antonio, so that he could learn the game on a high level. Kyrie has a yearning to learn. So I'm sure that many of the players in the Cleveland Cavaliers locker room are suspicious of Isiah Thomas. Number one, because he's shown that he's not willing to kowtow to any of the entities, any of the personalities in their locker room. He's not going to kowtow. He's not going to back down. He's not going to be submissive. And a personality like that can be disarming because you never know what they're capable of. You never know what they're going to do next. They're very unpredictable, especially for someone like LeBron James, who's used to people showing their obeisance to him.
I don't know. There was also in this Bleacher Report article saying that this was dividing the locker room a little bit or causing a problem in the locker room. Do you see that as being a problem?
I don't know.
Here's what I know. When every 2 weeks or every week and a half there's another excuse for why your locker room is fractured, it's just not meant to be. This is just not going to be Mr. LeBron James's year. This is going to be a year that he writes about in his book 30 years from now, when he comes out with probably the 4th edition of his autobiography that he calls The Lost Year. He's going to sit back and say, how the hell did that all happen to me? It's kind of like the warden in Shawshank Redemption when Andy Dufresne outsmarted him. It's like, wow. That's how Kyrie Irving is. Kyrie Irving is like the Andy Dufresne of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He outsmarted the warden LeBron, and LeBron's still trying to figure out how the hell it happened.
I don't know why. Tristan Thompson, you got your money, $80 million. You're making, $16 million a year. J.R. Smith, you're making $13 million a year. Crowder, you guys have got paid. I want to get paid.
Right.
So,
Tracy's getting right to the point. He understands the reason why Isiah Thomas is talking to Dan Gilbert is not because he's dropping dimes on what's going on in the locker room. Well, not necessarily, but because he's trying to ingratiate himself with the owner so that he can try to cement some type of contract at the end of this season. Now, who knows what he's doing in exchange for trying to start this, this strong rapport with the owner. He may be dropping dime on what's going on in the locker room. He may be telling the owner, so-and-so doesn't like so-and-so, and this is what so-and-so is saying about you. Dan Gilbert is a businessman, so of course he operates according to quid pro quo.
Right. So if you're right, you're
I gotta make sure I secure this bag when I'm a free agent this off season. So I don't see anything wrong with this.
And hey, now that it comes to my mind, Isiah Thomas is a member of the money team. So
it's weird how Isiah was this beloved figure in the NBA, and all of a sudden there's all this murmuring about how he's the new guys are causing tension in Cleveland, and it's weird how fast that happened. I don't know why anyone expected him to come back and be super healthy and productive. Now there's other stuff.
I agree with that. I'm on record as stating that it's going to take time for Isiah Thomas to get right. The issue that I have is, even if Isiah Thomas were to reattain 100% level of proficiency and health, which he's not going to do this season, would that make a difference? Is that what you're going to need to be a viable championship candidate? I don't believe so. Because Isiah Thomas on his best day is not as good as a 70% Kyrie Irving.
Stuff. I can't speak to what's going on in the locker room, but there have been issues like this. Like Chandler Parsons and Cuban had a very close relationship that kind of annoyed the other player. Did anything like that ever happen on any of your teams?
Never.
No.
It's player-owner's relationship.
Look, these are all the little things, and we know this. When you're winning, none of it matters. When you're losing, the tiniest little things get exploded. And then, as we just showed you on this...
Well, especially if you have a player in Isiah Thomas who's dealing with inferiority complexes and also needs to make sure that he secures his new contract. He needs to make sure that he gets his money. So he's scrambling right now. Isiah Thomas is like, wow, this is a real shit show. This is a dumpster fire. I have to make sure that I crawl out of this dumpster so that I can get my contract. Because LeBron is most likely not going to be here at the end of the season. And I told you guys in one of the early videos that I did pertaining to this subject, even before the season started, that Dan Gilbert was potentially looking at, in my view, carrying on without LeBron, maybe with an Isiah Thomas and a Boogie Cousins. Now, we know that in light of Boogie Cousins' Achilles heel injury, they'll probably have to scrap that one. But then again, you never know. Dan Gilbert might take the chance on it if LeBron James leaves and he can bring in IT and Boogie Cousins on a bargain. Who knows what can happen? But now that I think of it, Isiah Thomas and Boogie Cousins have a history in Sacramento. And if I remember correctly, they did not get along particularly well. Allegedly.
You on the screen, if you guys in the control room can bring that back up. LeBron James, social media, cranked up again this morning, and he is talking about people's effort level. Maybe he's talking about himself. When you become lazy and disrespectful to those who believe in you, when you become lazy, it is disrespectful, to those who believe in you.
He's definitely not talking about himself, that's for sure.
Well, I don't, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to kumbaya it here. Maybe, I don't know, maybe this is latitude, or maybe it's a target. I don't know.
LeBron feels that way.
It's obviously a target. LeBron James is not talking about himself. He doesn't invest millions of dollars a year on exercise equipment and PEDs, allegedly, for him to get lazy, especially not at 33 years old. These are the prime years of a LeBron James right now in regards to winning championships. These are the seasons where any result under winning a championship is an absolute failure. So he's obviously not talking about himself.
That way, that's a very bad sign. You're talking about a guy that's on the verge of going to 8 straight finals, and
presumably, I still have him as my favorite only because of who he is. If it wasn't for him being who he is, I certainly would have Boston being the favorites. But it's a long season. You never know. Kyrie has been someone who has been injury prone. The Celtics are a very thin line between being a 55-win team and a 41-win team. So their margin of error is very slim, the Celtics.
Some of these guys have never even tasted a conference finals. Now, you playing with the best player in the world. Like, how can you be lazy playing with this guy knowing what's at stake? I don't understand.
I understand. They hate his fucking guts. That's what it is. It's not even that they're lazy. They just hate him. LeBron is an acquired taste. Once again, this ideology, this sentiment that has been pushed by the liberal sports media over the last 4 or 5 years that all these players around the NBA want to flock to play with LeBron James, that has never been true. It's never been true. LeBron is that chick with the big titties and the fat ass who has a funky attitude. And it's hard to make anything work with her after a certain amount of time. That's just who he is. That's why I told you guys before the season they had to bring in Dwayne Wade, because they had to bring in someone who could act as a psychological support for LeBron James. Because the pressure of being the leader of the Cleveland Cavaliers for the previous 3 seasons was wearing on him. It was too much. He's not equipped to be a leader. So they had to bring in Dwayne Wade, hoping that they could replicate that synergy that they had in Miami. And it has failed because the players don't respect Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade is another one. He's like a half level above Paul Pierce. He tries to act like he's a Kobe or a Tim Duncan or someone who's deserving of that level of esteem, and he's not. But what he is the person who taught LeBron James how to lead a team when everything else is right. When the coach is right, the front office is right, your teammates are right. That's what LeBron was missing.
I mean, LeBron's had some lazy defensive games this year himself. I'm
Rightfully
giving up.
so. He's earned that right.
Absolutely. It's a regular season. He can do whatever he wants. I've given up trying to read the LeBron social media.
The LeBron tea leaves. Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. It tells you where we are because LeBron posted that Arthur meme and everyone was like, oh my gosh, he's digging into teammates. It was during a losing stretch, but instead all the teammates kind of piled on and had fun with it and posted their own memes.
Yeah, that was before the locker room blew up, though. That was before the detonation. LeBron looking at the team right now, and they have about 30 games left, 32, 33 games left, and he's like, whew, we got to get through this, win a couple of rounds in the playoffs, hopefully get back to the finals. Hopefully we can win 3 rounds and then get back to the finals, and I'm out of here.
I don't get the impression the mood in the Cavs locker room is to pile on and have fun with this one, but we will see. Before we go to break.
But anyway, that's the story on Mr. Isiah Thomas. and I can't say that I particularly blame him. He is operating according to CYA, cover your own ass at this point. He has a family to take care of. He's in a locker room that is toxic, and he's looking out for himself. Anyway, peace.